We don't have too much time together, but I thought that we could tell a little bit of Willie and Prince's story so you can kind of understand how the Justice League came together. So for those who are familiar with the Justice League can learn a little bit more, and those who are new can learn a lot, hopefully. So I will sit down and we can get started. And your mics are right there if you want to turn them on. Okay. So everybody can hear you. All right. So I wanted to go way back for the two of you and think back to your first experience in your lives when you maybe saw or understood there were disparities that were bigger than maybe your family's individual circumstances between you and others.
Yes, that it stands out to me how that came about for me. I learned to read early, right? And so going to public school was my awakening, because when I learned to read from a textbook that had in the label, you know, when you open the cover and in the label on the cover says property of some school district. The book that I opened and realized that I was reading, it said this book is the property of the Leland White School. I grew up in the segregated South, as I said, and so that meant that book had been used for years by white students. And then it was passed down to the school that was all black. And when I saw that, I realized that me and people who looked like me were being marginalized.
And Prince?
Yeah, for me, it was, I'm a student, right? I think we're all students in some capacity, and I think that I grew up really appreciating having a relationship with my professors and with my teachers. And when I look back at college or high school, I realized that the majority of my professors were white, and I always wondered why that was. And growing up in a matriarchy, like my mom was my first teacher, and so to get outside of the home and to have none of my professors or none of my teachers to be a person of color, I wondered, what was the disparity there? Clearly, there had to be qualified, African American professors or teachers. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with having diversity in staff, but it's to say that in my neighborhood that was predominantly African American, why was it a lack of African American teachers?
So we're going to jump ahead a little bit to maybe the pandemic for the two of you. Well, can you remember the first conversation you had about starting the Justice League and what that idea was? You can start, Willie.
Yeah, yes. The pandemic was such an eye-opener for me. I thought about it. I saw the pandemic affect African Americans much more devastatingly than it did white America. And, I realized right away, I'm saying, man, this highlights the disparities in our existence. This highlights why, the lack of good health care or the lack of resources that allow you to get good health care. So that what I realized was that the population in Michigan of African Americans is 14% of the total population. The death rate for African Americans during the pandemic was 40% of the population was dying. And they were, African Americans. And I thought, this this is it. I just cannot sit and decide that this is terrible. We should do something about it. The government should do something about it. And that was the bottom line for me. I said, we have to do something. I have to do something. And so, a couple of years prior to that, I had met a young man who I remembered.
Who is that young man?
I remembered, and I tucked his name away. And so when I had this idea to say, we need to do something, and I knew that I wanted it to be, I wanted it to affect the African American population, and I wanted to have an endowment that could live in perpetuity, that could help and alleviate the problems that we were witnessing caused by the pandemic. So I thought, what I'll need is a financial advisor. And I had met this young man who worked with MSU, FCU, right? And we were in the building here. And I said, wow, yeah, I remember, I called him up and I said, hey, what do you think about, and I told him this story and said, what do you think about something like that happening? And I told him about it. And only a few sentences in, he said, I'm in. Let's do it. Let's stop thinking about it. Let's stop talking about it. Let's do this. And here we are. We're right here today.
I wanted to get into some of the vocabulary you use, and I'll send it to Prince. I've heard this term from both of you, repairing the breach, when it comes to your work. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I think in being in this work, it's challenged me to check any type of disunity within my own heart, whatever that may be related to, because we're constantly trying to repair the breach of people understanding history and being proactive about it, trying to be the breach between predominantly white houses of worship and the African American community. So whatever I think is impossible due to ego or due to disunity, I have to remove that, because repair is a mission that's bigger than yourself. And over the past 4 years, it's waking up and realizing that we're doing work that's bigger than ourselves. So that's part of repair for me.
I think this room can attest of how much support you've had and grown. But I also want to talk about maybe the tough conversations with people that come to you and say, well, I don't have any connection to the past and anything connected to how African Americans were treated in the past. Like, why do I support this? So what's your answer to those questions because I'm sure you've heard them.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I want to say, and I think it's important, is that everyone, black, white, indifferent, has been affected by that past. And, we all have lived that. White Americans who can say, this doesn't affect me. My parents only came to this country in the, early 1900s or so. But I'd like to point out that the ability to enjoy privileges that you do enjoy in this country. I mean, being able to recreate where you want, being able to live where you want, being able to go to school, work, when realizing that your black sisters and brothers, because of the enslavement of their ancestors, are not able to enjoy the same privileges. And so I always like to point that out, that everyone is affected, everyone enjoys, and especially white America, enjoys wealth that African Americans do not. Um, no generational wealth. You heard Dr. Parker mention that. We talk about that all the time. And that's caused by the history and the legend of slavery and its aftermath, of course.
I'm going to ask this question, but if anybody in the crowd has questions and wants to submit them, I think somebody will collect them, so I'll make sure we get to those next. What is the responsibility of the government here? Should the government have any role in the work you're doing, whether it's on a local level, a state level, or a federal level? I don't know, either if you want to take it. It's a big question.
Yes, we think so. We think that the government should be doing this. I mean, the work that we do, and we talked about that tonight. We talked about our successes, and we're excited about that. But the government could make these changes with one legislative move. It could be done unilaterally. It could be done for the entire country. We are a grassroots organization. We go from our locally, we want to affect the change. And so the government would certainly be the place to have the changes made, and it would be all said and done.
I think somebody had a question, so I want to make sure that they're writing it. So we'll keep going. You started by working with churches and other houses of worship, but I think on the graphic that we had up there, I think it's 51% houses of worship, 42% community support. So how have people gotten involved in the Justice League beyond maybe institutions?
Yeah, so this work with the Justice League, I would say, is like the greatest calling of my life. And I'm from Lansing. I've lived here for 33 years. So when Willie shared this blueprint, I wanted to take the message out into the community, places where we were least expected. And so whereas we started out and we are still doing educational outreach within houses of worship, I wanted to take it to colleges and universities, to seminaries, right? To be able to plant the seed with community organizations that I've served with throughout the years. And so that has to be intentional, but that also helps to gain community merit. And so we've been very strategic. If you have time before you leave, please walk around the room. There are images on these easels, and it is a demonstration of trying to be strategic with building partnerships, community partnerships, business partnerships that can help support this work and longevity.
And I think we're running out of time, but I think I can speak I don't think we're trying to get it all in, folks. So I think Willie and Prince are so open to talk and share. We met 2 years ago in the basement of Sycamore Creek Church. So I want to make sure that, I'm sure if you have questions, they will be there to answer them. So I want to end with, where do you see the Justice League in 5 years? Or beyond that, but let's start with 5.
Yeah, the dream. The dream. I'd like to see, you saw the house, it's in fact it's over there on the easel. I'd like to think that the Justice League, in cooperation with, I've talked to folk, especially folk in the Black church, and I'd like to see the Justice League owning 100 acres of land and building these houses for first-time homeowners, and having, I'd like to see the Justice League be fully staffed. You see all the volunteers around this room. This room is full of volunteers with the Justice League, and we enjoy wonderful relationships with our wonderful volunteers. I want to share that we have started building staff. the board of directors have sanctioned our first staff beginnings. And in fact, I'd like to, the board authorized or approved an executive director, someone to lead us, someone to take us through the ups and downs. And I'd like to introduce you tonight to that person, to the new executive director that's been hired essentially by Justice League. It's wonderful to say that we are just 4 years in, and now we're able to hire. So I'd like to introduce you to our new executive director, Prince Solace. There he is. There he is.
Oh, yeah. I think you really wound that up. That's a great way to end. Prince, anything to add? Can you follow that up?
I just really appreciate the love and support that you've shown the Justice League. Willie has a tremendous amount of leadership, and I thank God for the work that we're doing, and I'm excited about the next 5 years.
Well, I can only speak to, you know, my job as a journalist and a storyteller, and your stories are only as good as the people you talk to. So I've really appreciated getting to know Willie and Prince over the years. I think it's been exactly almost 2 years since we've all met. Mm-hmm. And, you know, their willingness to share their personal stories and the stories of their organization, I think has really spoken to the growth of it. So thank you both for chatting with me, and thank you all for listening and joining us.